So I wanted to do a video that kind of covered stats, some specific numbers on my operation, what I do here. Go into like how much space is under cultivation, what size is the yard. How do I make money? What do I make money off of? And how do you like how much can you make with what I've got here? So let's see, how do I start this? I guess I'll start with like the way I make money. And I would say there's better videos to watch than this because I'm not going to do a how-to in this video on how to propagate. But I will tell you what I propagate, and I will tell you what methods I use. If you want to see good propagation methods, if you don't already have a place you go for that, I would suggest looking at Huron's Bonsai channel and Edible Acres. There's really good horticultural techniques in both those videos, and Edible Acres is a great place to watch for how you propagate in a permaculture farm. But I'll give a little bit of that here. If you want something in more detail, go there because I won't have a video on that probably for some time if I ever do one. But I wanted to show that in the spring and fall this happens. And this being fall at the time I make this video, the conditions are just so spring-like. And what I wanted to show is like next to my air conditioner, this is a Chickasaw plum sucker. Okay, now it's gonna have to go. I can't leave it here. Okay, so I either have to mow it and kill it, or dig it up and if I'm digging it up, might as well pot it up. And there you go. I've just propagated a tree. So in a permaculture situation, your propagation is going to look like that. If you look, you see they're sending suckers out all over the place. The Chickasaws. There's tons of them. There's one there. There's two here actually. Okay, I don't know if you're counting, but you can see that it adds up pretty quick. And I have to get this guy out of here. See all of these? There's several. Okay? And this is in probably like a 5 foot by 5 foot square patch in my yard. I can go all over the place and find these. It's a lot of work. If you don't want to do the work, well, you have the option of mowing it over. But if you're trying to make money, which is what we're talking about here, you dig them up, you pot them up. Some will die, and inevitably some will live. And since they're native, there's a lot less work in potting them up than with some more finicky non-native trees. So it's pretty easy to propagate them. Another way is if you look at my trees, it should be obvious this is not natural. They are pruned to look like this, and that generates a lot of clippings. You take those wood clippings, those trimmings, those prunings, and you can actually get them to sprout roots if you know how to propagate them. Huron's Bonsai uses sphagnum moss, and I've had mixed results with that. I will say that much on it. But there's loads of methods for doing that. I've mentioned in another video that I grow willow for the free and natural rooting hormone that's in there. So, you usually you put some rooting hormone on it, and you leave it in some kind of a very moist and shady environment, not too hot, and generally speaking, that's the process. And they will sprout roots and new leaves, and you get a new plant. Now, you can see by the terminating tips on these trees that if I prune them every year and just use them just for propagating, I will generate hundreds. And this is just a small stand of trees. I have these trees in other places, so I could probably get into the thousands of cuttings and propagate them. Now, I don't really have great results percentage-wise starting cuttings. I think if you're getting like 60% rooting on your cuttings, you're probably doing really well. But I don't get near that high. I probably get because I'm really not that good at this. So I probably get like 20 to 30% that root. But since I have so many, it's still a lot. And they're just going to be composted anyway if I don't do that. So it doesn't really cost me a whole lot. And if they don't sprout, I just reuse the dirt, and you just keep doing that. Rinse and repeat until eventually everything sprouts and I get all the stock that I need. And that process works for just about every single tree I have here. They almost all can be propagated from cuttings. So if they don't have this suckering habit, which is a really easy way to generate them, because when you dig those up, you get a little hunk of root with it, and the tree does just fine. It's very easy to keep them alive. I have nearly I would say at least 90% success with potting those up. So if you don't have a suckering habit, the cuttings, which is going to be a waste product anyway, you might as well turn that into a profit. So the way I see it, even though I'm not getting great propagation percentages, it's a waste product. It's better than just wasting it, making money off trash. And I think the third way, especially if the trees and the shrubs to make money, would be the air layering. So if you're not familiar with air layering, again, I would suggest Huron's Bonsai. His method is what I use. He has how-to videos on it, and you're not going to get a better video from me on that. The guy is fantastic. So I think Peter Chen, I think is his name. So look at his videos. That's exactly what I do. It's cheap, relatively. I get extremely high success rates with it. I would suggest, looking at that. But air layerings is almost a 100% success rate with that. Potting them up. Once you put them in a pot, by the time you put them in a pot, there's already a giant root base. So you can propagate them that way. And I guess, as always, with anything, this kind of goes with that saying, I do use this as a propagation method, is seed. So, of course, all of my annuals and biennials, those are propagated via seed. That's pretty much the only way I know how to do that. I do know you can take cuttings of Malabar spinach and put it in some water, and it roots very easily. But it also is a prolific seeder, and it grows just fine from seed. So I have no need to grow them from cuttings. But if you could monetize that way, you could grow a Malabar spinach. It grows so late in the season, by the time you propagate it, no one's going to want to buy it. I doubt anyone would want to buy it. So as far as making money in terms of generating your inventory, that's generally all the methods that I use. It's anything you're going to see in any other gardening channel. But to move on to selling them, well, I do it in garage sale fashion. So you're familiar with garage sales, you do it out of your, just open up your garage right out of your driveway, set up your stuff, and neighborhood comes out. I happen to live in a neighborhood where there's an HOA, and you can pay the HOA, and then they give you a permit, and then they advertise for you, and there's like a whole day, like the whole neighborhood does their garage sales, and I can sell my plants that way. And I get enough people, because it's a large neighborhood and there's surrounding areas, that I easily sell out of what I can produce or what I have produced. So now I have done some experiments, and you see right now my little operation is it's much reduced in terms of scale, in terms of how much I've produced in the past. But that was mainly because I was wanting to see the viability of doing it this way before I went all in. So I did this for about 3 years, and I did a whole bunch of propagation and generated a whole bunch of stock, and from everything that I grow here. And 1 year paid for a nursery license. So if you are going to do this in Texas at least, and I am not an attorney, don't ever take legal advice from me. You hear the accent, so why would you listen to anyone that sounds like that? But basically, you will have to get a hold of the Texas Department of Agriculture and get a nursery license if you want to sell plants. Now, I do believe that if you're selling fruits and vegetables, you don't need to do that. You don't need a license. But if you're going to sell plants and seeds and things like that, you do. Okay, folks, I just wanted to pause it right there real quick to make a quick comment about seeds and selling seeds. It is a different license to sell seeds than it would be to sell plants and plant starts. Forget the name of the license, but it is still under the Texas Department of Agriculture, and it is substantially more expensive to sell seeds. When you go into the seed business, there's labeling and packaging and inspection that you have above and beyond what you have with plants. You have to, for instance, know that your germination rate is a certain percentage, and it has to be at a certain level before you're even allowed to sell seeds. There is possibly one exception, and that is native seeds, not counting native grasses. Native grasses fall under the same classification as vegetable and other agricultural products, seeds specifically. But like for instance, some of my wild native plants, like the sunflowers, the Chickasaw plums. As far as my research has gone, and I've actually talked to a number of officials at the Texas Department of Agriculture and even the Forestry Department, there's no known regulation in Texas for selling those seeds. Now, weights and measures might get involved because you are packaging and labeling things, and they want to make sure that you have packaged and labeled things correctly. But other than that, there really isn't, as far as I know so far, any real regulation with selling the seeds of most of your native plants, except for native grasses. So that might be a possible business. Might be a way for you to get around having to deal with all the licensing and regulation on the seeds if you wanted to go into the seed business. But for me, it's just more trouble than I think it's worth, so I don't really sell seeds. And it's not too expensive. You pay for the license, and then an inspector comes out and makes sure that you're not spreading disease with what you're wanting to sell. You don't have to have your inventory. So if they just need to see, your methods, your how your operation works. So if you don't have an inventory ready to sell, then, the inspector can still come out and inspect, but, you have to get licensed every year. So, if you don't have inventory to sell, it's kind of a waste of money. It's on the year that you get certified. So, and if you want to have a temporary, like if you want to go somewhere with your crops, you have to pay for a temporary, I think they call it a temporary nursery license or a temporary location license or something. And you can drive around like farmers markets and whatnot and let you sell that way if you don't want to sell out of your own house or something for whatever reason. So one year I paid for the nursery license through the Texas Department of Agriculture. Had an inspector come out, got certified, and sold a bunch of stock. Okay, and I've also done some experiments growing, certain crops to see what's the maximum yield that I can get out of a certain garden bed or something like that. I have done those tests. So mostly when I went into selling the trees and various crops, it was to test, how much could I produce and could I produce it cheaply and try to get a feel, because I've never worked in the nursery industry. So, to get a feel for just like what type of infrastructure I need to make it an efficient operation. So it taught me a lot. And I think that's a good way to do it. I'd advise that to anybody if you're just getting started in this. Do a test run, basically, which is what I did. So I've done that with actual production of produce, and I've done that with selling of seeds and plants and plant starts. So, and the year that I did it with the plants and plant starts, I made $6,000 profit. As far as the cost now, very little cost. See, that year, and this is off the top of my head, most of the time when people do these hard number videos, they pull up a spreadsheet for you, and I'm just not quite that sophisticated of a YouTuber yet to know how to do that. So just bear with me. But the amount that it cost me that year for all of the materials was about $125. And you say, well, that's an awfully round, even number. That's because I know that that's a little bit over. It was something probably like around $123.75. But generally speaking, it was about $125 roughly that it cost me. I generated a lot of my own soil. I propagated all of my own plants. I didn't have to pay for the stock. Now, if you factor in what I initially spent to get everything seeded, my initial expenditure of everything in the yard for crops and everything was around $800. And then from there, I propagated everything. So if you can break that down over the course of time, and then you can say, well, you didn't really pay yourself for your labor, which is true, and you do need to consider that. Okay, if you're trying to produce enough income to completely pay for every single one of your bills that you have, then yes, you probably do need to factor in your labor, because you could be somewhere else getting paid by the hour or a yearly salary or something that could help you live. So yeah, of course. But if you're in a situation like I am, where you're old and you've worked your whole life and saved your money and paid off, and you don't really have any debt, and it takes very little for you to pay your bills, then that may be something you don't have to worry about as much, paying yourself for your own labor. Maybe you're going to be doing this anyway. Maybe you do this on the weekend as a hobby, but that is a way you can monetize it. But just keep in mind, you got to get licensed if you're going to sell plants and plant starts. Well, so hopefully there's some information you found in here, how to propagate, what to propagate. I might do some individual videos like in the spring or when I ramp back up. I don't know if I'm going to ramp back up next year and sell some stock. I may. But that's another point of this, is that when you build something like this, and I did mention this in another video, what I'm really building is just potential. Anytime I really feel like I can just ramp up, get licensed, and sell something that year if I need to. And I'll mention this too in terms of where did I make all that profit? That's something you need to analyze in your the market in your area. In my area, there isn't a huge demand for native species, native fruit trees. The biggest money maker is just selling like tomato plants, tomato starts. So that's what most people will buy, So if you're able to sprout tomatoes and greens and the things you see at every Home Depot and feed store in the spring, but sprout like heritage varieties that they don't see at those stores, that's what made the most money. And you can sprout hundreds of those, trays and trays of them, and sell them. And yeah, it takes electricity to sprout them during the winter in this area. But when you add up the cost per unit, I made my pots out of newspaper. The cost per unit for the dirt, even if you use a high grade potting soil, it's not a ton of soil for a small tomato plant. So and then there's the water and everything. If you add it all up, the electricity, everything, it's still pennies, and you can sell them for like $3 a piece. So yeah, you sell hundreds of those. People will come in and buy trays of like 20, 40 of them at a time. Those go quick. So if you are going to do something like this, it's like any business. You have those high volume products that you can just turn over. And maybe the profit, like the cost versus the profit you make maybe isn't as high on, say, like what it costs to produce a tree, because a lot of these native trees, the labor is minimal, and the water usage is minimal. I don't need it to use a light to grow it, so there's no electricity costs. So cost per unit is really cheap. But I'm going to sell a lot less. The demand for that in this area, at least, is super low. I'm hoping by spreading and educating, which nobody watches, there's like 14 people, but hopefully one day somebody sees this and says, and picks it up and starts to pick up the right trees. And I've looked around in my area, and a lot of these native products nobody has, except for the one I've mentioned, Eco Blossom. They have a good many of these native products, and I highly advise you go there. Really good stock, and their stock is available all year round and online. So, but you do have to go pick it up. So, and they don't have everything. Like I've mentioned before, the cross timbers is not like. It's not like there's like all the species in the cross timbers, so you can't find them anywhere else in Texas. And most of them you can. So they're not selling necessarily native products specific to the cross timbers. They're selling their products are native to Texas, but really good stuff. Highly advise you go there. Oh look, we have a fruit on the Turk's cap, and I've mentioned that the flowers are the flower petals are edible. And that I've read that the young leaves are edible, and I haven't tried those yet. But the fruits, I think they are. I think I've read that. Again, I haven't tried those yet. And I did a video on some of the trees that I had, and I didn't mention some of the trees, the fruit trees I have. The leaves are actually edible, like the fig. The young leaves supposedly are edible. I haven't tried them. But it's just interesting to know that, just how much food you can eat if you go with non-traditional food sources. But, okay, so it's a bit of a rambling, but yeah, those sprouting from seed type annuals that everybody buys boatloads of every year and put in their garden and kill, though that's what you want to, if you want easy money in this area. But selling the trees, yeah, I sell a few here and there, and then people come in buying, they want tomato plants, and then they see the trees, and some of them actually do come back and like, yeah, I want to grab one of those little shrubs, or I want an elbow bush or something like that. It does happen, but it's just much lower. You're not gonna, you sell one, yeah, you make a huge profit off each unit, but you don't sell as many units. So some widgets. So just keep that in mind. That's what I've learned so far. I'm by no means an expert. I'm not some kind of like industry guru in this area or anything on it, obviously, but just a dude in his yard, learning what he can learn on his own, and experimenting. And this is what I've figured out so far. And if you got some suggestions that maybe I could do it better, I'd love to hear it. If it's legitimate, if it actually works, and I'm going to do it, because that's one of the great things about when you go into business, or you try to go into business, is you're going to be very pragmatic. You're going to use what works. There's no pride involved. So yeah, I'd love to hear it. Anything that can help me, put more of these crops out there that don't really cause a problem. I would. That's exactly what my goal is. Alrighty.